Let's bring it into analogy so Batman can understand. Let's say I leave a box in my basement. In 2 generations, my grandkid comes and picks up the box and fills it with Legos. Does that mean I planned for the box to be used, or does it mean it was there and by coincidence got used?
Well, hold on. Let me touch on that too. Actually. So like I looked at some of my friends' design, right, and they had an engine mount design in which they had a couple Zero Force members basically members that don't do anything, right? Well, those members are there just in case there's a failure in a member that is picking up loads. So then the Zero Force members would pick up some of the load in order to keep the thing from completely failing. So it wasn't the mount that planned that. It was them. So if you want to say God planned something, don't say genes planned it. Genes don't have any cognition to do any planning.
This is what happens when you get someone who doesn't know jack shit about science, is a part-time teacher.
I do have one question.
Reads one elementary textbook and thinks, oh, well, this is clearly God.
Well, it's going to be easy because he's going to leave in a second as soon as somebody unmutes him. So, Bees Knees, could you unmute him, please?
How can God be real if our eyes aren't real?
Whoa.
There's some deep shit, man. Yeah, you've got no response to that one, do you?
How can God not be real if numbers are not real?
All trees are actually purple.
I love it when you talk about base pairs. Wouldn't you agree that that genetics requires base pairs?
What we said.
Oh no! Here he comes.
Wouldn't you agree that genetics requires base pairs?
What's your point? What's your point, Batman?
Wouldn't you agree, sir, that genetics requires base pairs?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily require base pairs. It just ends up having base pairs because that's the way it's evolved.
You see, again, this is another example of how evolution doesn't work. Because base pairs have to come in how many? Pairs, twos. And they have to be arranged in specific symbols. A specific arrangement of complex arrangement of specific symbols that performs a function that conveys a message. Once again, pointing out that you cannot explain where the information and the arrangement of this information comes from in the genetic code. You see, sir, DNA proves your position false. Would you like to repent now or perish?
Yeah, actually, nobody in evolution.
Yes, Trey's a lot.
Oh, yep.
So hold on. The origin of life is not touched upon in evolution. So you're talking about something that evolution is not referring to, for the record.
Actually, it does, sir. It does refer to the origin of life. Because if we go backwards in time, if we are increasing in complexity and going from goo to you by the way of the zoo, then in reverse, we would go from you to goo by the way of the zoo. And what was before the goo if there was no thing? There was no life. So in essence, sir, you have to actually look at the dynamics. The dynamics tells you that you believe that nothing produced life.
Actually, yeah, like I said, evolution is not about that. Evolution.
Then where did the first life come from, sir?
Mr. Batman, I'm not done talking. So evolution.
Well, great. Then if you're going to say that evolution doesn't believe that, where did the first life come from?
Okay. Let me actually educate you first, and then we can answer your question.
So, well, sir, where did the first life come from? I'm a teacher. I teach this stuff on a regular basis. I do not need or require your information. So can you go ahead and answer the question? Where did the first life come from?
Fuck off.
I'm an actual teacher. Finish, or you're just not going to talk. Okay. So what evolution actually does talk about is allele change in genetic code in a population over generations. That's it. How that started, evolution has no clue whatsoever. So, now that I've explained that to you, what is your question, Mr. Batman? Oh, he got muted. Rightfully so.
Okay, but see if he changes the topic. Call him out on it. He does this a lot.
I've asked him.
I will ask one thing. Do you know what a lesson plan is?
Sir, wouldn't you agree that changes in allele over time actually does not tell you where the alleles came from, where that specific complex arrangement of those alleles come from at all? And sir, in order to understand that they have changes in alleles over time, those alleles came from somewhere. So again, sir, that your belief system states that nothing produced everything, that non-living matter produced living matter, and you just simply believe that. That's fine. I could care less. I could also prove that your belief in evolution, in the way you proclaimed it, is also false, sir. I have done so numerous times.
Okay, Mr. Batman.
But you just haven't, though.
Hold on, everybody chill. Everybody chill for a second. Let me address this. Okay, Mr. Batman. Yeah, you're right. Evolution doesn't answer the question of where the alleles came from. You're absolutely correct, because that has nothing to do with evolution. Second of all, you don't actually know my thoughts on evolution. All I did was explain to you the actual definition of evolution. You don't know anything about
evolution. Is from goo to you by the way of the zoo in a few billion years. From fish to philosopher. This is exactly the way it was first portrayed when back 2,000 years or 1,500 years before Christ, that these Greeks and ancient peoples were actually proclaiming how we got here, since they didn't want to believe in the one true creator God.
Okay.
What?
Yes, sir. This is not anything new. Darwin did not come up with this.
The Greeks were 300 years before. What are you talking about? The Greeks aren't that old.
I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was about 1,000 years before Christ. But again, it's been a while since I've looked into this.
So
but evolution is not from Darwinian mentality. Darwin did not come up with it. As a matter of fact, Darwin learned it from his grandfather. So again, when it comes right down to it, this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. This has been portrayed right from the very beginning. The only thing that Darwin did, it says we had a common ancestor from apes to men. What the original theory was, from fish to philosopher. That's exactly the way it was portrayed.
That's not exactly what happens. What Darwin also did give us is a mechanism by which evolution occurs, which is natural selection.
Natural selection doesn't occur. There's no such thing. There's only adaptation.
Okay.
That's literally.
Look, whether you think, hold on. Whether you think natural selection occurs or not is not the point. What the point is that Darwin gave us a mechanism by which evolution could occur. Okay.
No, sir. Evolution cannot occur, and it's actually he's proved. Darwin himself even proved that it couldn't occur simply from the complex systems in the human body. He pointed out the eye specifically. Now, if we're talking about again how things change, we never see an increase of information. We don't see this natural selection. What we do see, sir, is we see adaptation. The fact that these animals were created with enough genetic information and variability to allow them to adapt to their surroundings.
Somehow I think this guy is very familiar with Downs, on the point of the guy who brought up Downs as an increase in information. But it's just
what you mean syndrome?
What? Yeah.
You mean syndrome? Like I'm not taking it seriously, so.
Oh, there's no such thing as an increase of information. You can have a rearranging of information. You can have a reduction information that might actually be beneficial. You can have a duplication of existing information, such as an extra chromosome or additional information that can cause cancers and things like that. But these are not beneficial. These mutations are always detrimental to the organism.
They're not always
that immediate generation to future generations.
There can be neutral, negative, or positive. They're not always negative. These examples, yeah, sure, they are negative. Sure, the majority of the time it is negative. But those are taken out of the gene pool. They don't reproduce, or at least not as much.
I can't hear a word you're saying. There's too much background noise.
Sorry, one sec, I'll change my microphone settings.
And your accent sucks.
It's like you're talking.
Wow.
Oh, coming from you. Wow.
Buddy, mate.
Triggered.
Mate. There was no need for that. There was absolutely no need for that. Right.
All right, bro.
I mean, he doesn't sound like he fucks his cousin.
Ad hom much?
Okay, right.
Oh,
so
God, yes.
About ad homs,
it's okay when I do it, but when you do it against me,
you have no reason to say anything's right or wrong in your worldview, do you?
Okay, right. So I'm going to go back to my point because I don't think people heard it. You can have positive, neutral, and negative adaptations. Most adaptations are negative. That's things like Down syndrome, cancer, etc.
Neutral.
Neutral is things like being albino.
I wouldn't count being albino as neutral.
All right.
Right. Okay, right. Things like albino squirrels, alligators, they can still survive, they can still pass on their genes, right?
Oh, not in humans, okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I do know an albino. Okay, right, that's beside that point. Yeah. And then you have positive adaptations. This is things like when a giraffe's neck grows, etc. Well, that's not the best example, but
would you like me to help you with a positive mutation, sir?
This goes all the way back to these. Okay, one second.
There's a vein in the giraffe's neck that grew too long when it evolved.
Sir, again, would you like to talk about maybe how, I don't know, viruses and things like that mutate and are no longer susceptible to antibiotics?
Sure, I guess it's positive for the virus, but not positive for us.
We're actually using viruses at the moment.
Because actually, I can show you, sir, how that is a mutation that is actually a loss of information that is beneficial to that organism that makes it no longer susceptible to the antibiotics. It's not an increase of information. It is a loss of the actual proteins that were actually affected by the antibiotics. So now that those germs, those viruses no longer have that particular enzyme, they're no longer susceptible to that antibiotic.
Yeah, see, what people seem to forget is that evolution is a change in allele frequency. That doesn't necessarily mean that something is being gained, it gets lost. That's all within the umbrella of evolution.
Yes, a change in the frequency of the alleles. I love that, sir. So if it changed from the working information, and now that change is now not working, how does that benefit the organism?
I didn't understand your question. So something's working and something's not working, but I don't know what that it refers to.
Well, let me ask you again, sir. How did that working information get into the genome to begin with to change?
You're asking me what's the mechanisms by which it could exist? It could come into existence in a.
Sir, I'm asking you how any information could get into the genetic code originally for it to change. Did it happen simply by the chemicals laying there in a goop and they just arrange themselves happenstance like?
Oh, you're asking me about the origins of life. Yeah, like I just said, we don't really know about the origins of life.
Well, sir, how about information? How about chemicals? How do these chemicals arrange themselves, sir? Do these chemicals simply arrange themselves in these complicated formats and arrange these bonds in these ways, these complicated ways that perform functions? Sir, how do you account for that arrangement of those symbols and specific enzymes and proteins?
See, here's the thing. If you have a question, I'm more than willing to answer, but you're going to have to let me actually answer the question. See, I didn't answer the way you wanted to, so you skip to a new question. That's not how this works. So if you want to answer a question, if you want me to answer
sir, I don't want an answer to a question, sir. I'm actually pointing out that your statement is false.
Okay.
I don't need an answer to a question, sir. I'm not asking I'm asking a rhetorical question, sir. I know the answer to the question. And, sir, the answer is you cannot explain it. You have no explanation for how this complicated arrangement of symbols got into the organism to begin with to have these changes come from.
Mr.
Again, you're going to
actually just ignoring any
You're pointing. You're going to point right to the information and say it's there and we use it. But then when you ask how did it get there, well, it's just there, so we use it. That's a fallacy, sir. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology. You might want to look it up.
Okay.
What's the name of the fallacy?
No, hold on. Everybody chill. Here's your problem. Like, at no point in time did I claim to know this. In fact, it was specifically explaining to you that we do not claim to know this. Like,
actually, sir, evolution does claim to know it. You can claim ignorance, but evolution does not. Even Darwin himself said we evolved from monkeys.
Okay, look. Okay, so
Darwin wasn't perfect.
Hold on. What Darwin said is not the encompassment of what evolution is today. Do you understand this? So, like, we don't just go by, Darwin said this, therefore I have to accept it. Okay? So, like, I don't actually know if we came from monkeys.
Sure, yes, sir. Wouldn't you agree we know a lot more today, like the complexity of the eye and the cell and all these different things? And, sir, because we know a lot more today, we know that we could not have come here by random chance and happenstance. This mutation that you rely on to give you new information in the genome, to give you an upward spiral from going from goo to you by the way of the zoo in a few billion years, sir, does not work. It's always a loss of information, a rearranging of existing information, or duplication of existing information, or it is neutral. And it's never neutral long term. It's always detrimental to the organism as a whole at some point in the future.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've given 2 examples here of positive mutations, 3 examples of positive mutations that we have been able to observe in the politics religion chat. These are mutations that have been positive for the organism. And as a result, their genes have been passed on.
Sir, all mutations are a loss of information, a duplication of existing information, or information that's put in the wrong order, a copying error. It's called a mutation.
And if that gives an
all
advantage,
this is detrimental to the organism. All is either detrimental to the organism immediately or long term. It's not a choice.
I've given you several examples of when it's positive, and I've also given you examples of when data is gained actually through mutations. And reorganizing mutations.
Sir, it doesn't gain mutation. How does a spelling error give you new information?
Okay, right. Well, there's things like.
How does a copying error of the existing information that works give you new information that works?
Is it copies the same thing twice? It happens is the same thing gets copied twice.
Sir, I don't think you're getting this. How does copying the existing working information, copying it incorrectly, give you new working existing information?
Like I've said,
I just told you how to.
Because there are base pairs, they change from 1 to 2, and certain base pairs, imply certain traits. That's control of various different, like.
Sir, are you saying that the base pairs know one another and know how to assemble themselves?
That's
great. Then how does that arrangement occur? How does that arrangement occur?
You're just moving right past
the organism know how to put that arrangement together.
Okay, look, duplication. A duplication consists of a piece of DNA that is abnormally copied one or more.
Sir, I understand duplication. A duplication, sir, is exactly that. It's a duplication of working existing information. So you're still not explaining where the working existing information.
So we made it. 100.
So yeah,
hey,
in case you guys haven't known this, he's not actually like interested in your answers. Hold on. Guys, he's not actually interested in any of your answers or any of the questions. What he just wants to do is like filibuster and talk over you. So answering his questions is a waste of time. Honestly, we should have him removed, to be honest.
That doesn't mean that it isn't somewhat amusing, at least at first. The only thing that this conversation has made me reconsider is my position on eugenics. TBQH.
Well, yes, sir. Why would it make you reconsider it? Because you never took it off the table since you have no morality.
Right. So he just hit 103 interruptions.
And you're a liar and the truth is not in you.
Add to 104.
I haven't even really
let's see what my gun says about that. Basically.
Well, my address is on my website, sir, if you'd like to come on by.
Shall we leave 104
Wait, are you asking for somebody
to
come to your house with a gun?
No, dear Lord. Let's not go in that direction, please.
I'm in Korea, so.
So, Bee's Knees, yeah. MrBatman has been acting this way for the last couple of days. Honestly, leave him muted at this point. I'm just not in the mood for this today.
Very well.
I just want to say
I'm amazed at how smooth his brain is. It's actually very beautiful in a way.
We found the smoothest object in the universe.
So I've had the smoothest object. No, that's still radical. Come on, boat, no steak. Nothing beats the boat, no steak.